Hi everyone, my name is Buffington and this is my interview project. So, why do we study aging? Research in aging helps us understand the society in which we live, and it also alerts us to certain processes and problems that we may experience as we grow into old age. So this is a very complex topic to discuss because it differs for each individual, but we have trends and similarities that we can study to get research and data to help us understand this age. So first, relationships. Throughout the duration of our life, we make many relationships. So we like to study social aging, which is the changes in a person's roles and relationships, both within their networks of relatives and friends, and informal organizations such as the workplace and house of worship. So key factors that influence relationships that we make are marital status, gender, sexuality, and age. So for this interview, I interviewed my grandmother. She is 71 years old. She has been married for 51 years. She has one son, which is my father, and two grandchildren, which is my sister and I. And I decided to discuss topics of her love life, children, grandchildren, siblings, friends, and significant life events, and how each of these significantly impact her making relationships and how they have impacted her life so far. So first, the questions that I asked her about her relationships that she made through her love life, I highlighted responses from these questions. What attracted you to your partners? How did y'all meet? What was the first date like? How did you know that your partner was the one? What has been the most challenging aspect of your relationship with your partner? What are some activities that you consistently did together as a couple? And what is the most essential thing for a successful relationship with a partner? So after 51 years of marriage, I gained many key insights of successful things that my grandmother did over her marriage. So the essentials for a successful relationship that I took away from this interview was that you need aspects of love, trust, and faith. She stressed that without one of these, that they would not have been where they were today. So she stressed that it is crucial that you spend quality time with one another, and that marriage is a unit, that you must take on things together. You need support from one another through everything, and you need to love wholeheartedly. And without the support from your significant other, then you would not have been where they were today. So my grandmother talked about them first meeting back in McDonald's at 1969, that it was love at first sight. She saw my grandfather and said that he was a gentleman, he was handsome, he was, the jock that you would talk about, and he was tall. So he immediately caught her attention, and they have been in love as much in love as they were back then as they are today. So next is the relationship with children and how having a child impacted their relationships. So I talked about how has your relationship stayed the same with your children as you've gotten older, and what all has changed, and what type of parenting style did you mostly associate with, because this can heavily impact the relationship that you have with your children when they were young as well as today. And what advice would you give to parents today? So my grandparents had my father when they were 19 and 20 years old. They were children. They did not have money. They did not have steady jobs, income. So the thought of having a child was very stressful to them because they did not have a steady income. So they had newfound challenges and responsibilities that they had to face because of this. But as one would think, having a child at such a young age with such high forces against them, that it would change their family dynamic as well as their relationship. But this was not the case for them, as it strengthened the love and bond in their marriage, and it brought a new pride and joy into their life. They had a permissive lifestyle, which they didn't have. My father was in sports, so they didn't really have to worry about keeping him in line. So they were more of friends and just a family unit rather than being authoritative and strict against him. So now they have daily phone calls, and we live 10 minutes apart from my grandparents. So we see each other all the time, and they're a big factor in all of our lives. So from this interview, I took away that my grandmother's biggest advice was to not be overbearing. Don't overstep, and keep your role as either a parent or a grandparent. So the next is relationships with grandparents and grandchildren and the impacts and the outcomes that it had. So the questions that I highlighted are: what kind of grandparent are you with your grandchild, and does it vary depending on the grandchildren? And some suggest that parents are gatekeepers of the interactions between grandparents and grandchildren. Have you experienced this in the amount and the type of contact that you have had with your grandchildren? If so, how? And then what advice do you have regarding being a grandparent? So my grandmother was blessed with 2 grandchildren, my sister and I. And this was a very exciting time in my grandmother's life. It was kind of a turn of events for her because she had always only had my father, and he was like the golden child, and she didn't feel the need to have any more children after she had my dad. So having 2 little grandchildren that she could spoil rotten was something that she loved. So from the time that I was born, I was the firstborn, and she moved city to city when we moved so that she could be close with us. So we always had a short living distance from my grandparents, and she was at every sporting event that we went to, every school event or anything like that, she was there. So the aspect of parental gatekeeping was not an issue for my parents and my grandparents because her permissive parenting was passed down to my father. So we were all very grateful for what my grandmother did to me and my grandfather as well, and their impact that they have had on my life. And an advice that she gave to my father that was passed down to me to future grandparents as well is: you can't control the uncontrollable, so don't stress over it. She always told us just to be the best version of ourselves that we can, and you just can't focus on the things that you can't control. So the next thing is the relationships with siblings. Do siblings have an impact on your life and your relationships? Well, of course they do. So the questions that I asked is: how has your relationship with your siblings changed from growing up through adulthood? And what is important to focus on your relationship with your siblings? So my grandmother is the oldest of 3 siblings. And growing up back in the 50s, she had a lot to do, and a lot of the responsibility fell on to the children. So my grandmother attained the nurturing genes and habits because she had to raise my great aunt and great uncle. So she raised them, did the home responsibilities. She cooked, she cleaned while her parents were at work or had other things to do. She was basically the second mom in the house. So my grandparents' relationship is very strong with their siblings because each of them went through the difficulties that they went through with the same mental aptitude and social stability. The key principle behind all of these relationships that is effective and still has allowed them to maintain their relationships today is friendship. Because of all the hardships they had to go through, they had to become best friends in order to get through hard times back then, as well as maintain their relationship today. So she stressed the aspects of honor, love, trust, and kindness between each of their relationships, and that still has a big impact on their life today. So next is friendships and true friends, as my grandma would like to say. So what is a true friend? What qualities are important for a friend at this point in your life? And what do you like to do with friends? So my grandmother has friends that she has had for decades, and I want that in my life, so I really dug deep into this aspect, and I tried to find out what were the main factors to the success of this. So my grandmother said that it is important to find true friends. And what is the meaning of a true friend? Someone that'll be there for you, someone that'll cry with you, be happy with you, someone that just wants the best for you. So the next is to keep in touch. You need to communicate. So my grandmother calls her friends all the time on the phone. They visit each other once a week. They take trips to other states and go do fun things. My grandmother is always active and almost never at home because she's always with her friends or other couples that her and my grandfather like to hang out with. So the next one is to keep an open mind. You might think that you want to have friends that are similar to you, but my grandmother points out that it is important to have people that like to challenge your mind and have differing opinions from you so that they can keep you on your toes and keep you the best version of yourself. So that allows you to always listen, and you need to support them in their decisions as well as they will with you. So the next is life events. What event had the biggest impact on your life? What has been the biggest accomplishment? And what has been the hardest thing that you have to overcome? So Over the course of my grandmother's life, she has had many life events that she mentioned, such as getting married, the birth of her only son, adult children, leaving and getting married. So that was when my father left and married my mom, and they moved away from them, and the birth of my sister and I. So this led to her finding new passions, such as activities that she likes to do with my grandfather, as well as finding new passions such as walking, and they go to antique car shows and stuff like that. So it strengthened their marriage and other relationships, as when my father left, they found a deeper love for one another that has continued on to today. So, as I said earlier, there are similarities and trends in research that we can study that show how marriage quality leads to the satisfaction in life and how these impacts change. So, in the aging adult population, research implies that married adults attain greater health, happiness, less loneliness, and more satisfaction in life. And this is data that is compared to unmarried adults, which is, you would think that this would be true. As you have a deeper love and a deeper connection and more relationships, you're going to have greater happiness, less loneliness, and greater health. So trends of marital satisfaction show a U-shaped curve. So it's high in the early and late stages of life, and then the low and middle stages is such as when the child leaves, your empty nesters and stuff like that happens, that your happiness and loneliness is going to decrease and your loneliness is going to increase. So there are fewer marital problems and more when you spend more quality time together, and that is a high and stable trajectory. So it is important that you spend quality time together, and data has suggested that as you have a deeper relationship with your spouse or your husband, wife, whatever, that you're going to have a higher trajectory in your marriage. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great day.